you can hear me today out on the stream. I can see I can see it. What's going on, everybody? Today we're in the studio with Ableton Live. I do have some of my other instruments around me, as you can see, the .com and the monopoly. And I've never done this before, so this is going to be brand new. Number one, you get to see me today. Hello. Happy Sunday. So this is going to be a very different stream. And different in the sense that typically I'm educating everyone in maybe like a specific idea, right? But I had the harebrained idea today to show everybody me working on a track or two, maybe a couple of my new tracks, and maybe how I work on my music in Ableton and my work process. So today I'm going to show everybody how I make a track basically from start to finish, as good, as bad, as however this is going to turn out. And I'm going to spend about 20 minutes doing it. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes explaining myself working on a track. So today is track work. We're going to be making a track in Ableton Live. The intro was a song that I've been working on just with this new idea, this new theory I have. And as I'm writing some of the music today, I will share with everyone like what I'm doing and the process in my studio of how I actually cut a track, let's call it, right? So without further ado, we're going to do that. The other thing is, to the side of me here are drum machines, right? So I got like a 909 replica here, and I have a Electron boxes next to me. So if anyone sees me make like a quick sound or a snare drum or a beat, and I explain that, that is probably me working on a drum machine that is sequenced, you know, inside of it. So we can definitely kind of work through some of these ideas, right? And I'll show everybody like my creative process in making like skeleton drums, I call them, and then making the rest of the drums for the track. And I'm also going to explain my technique in recording bass lines and how I make a lot of my music. So yeah, let's get started. So I'm going to make a new track. You're going to hear the audio cut off, and I'm going to come back in a second. And now that I'm back and you can hear me again, we're going to work on the track. So first thing that I typically work on is just a rhythm of some sort. And the reason I get a rhythm going is because in Ableton, if I don't have a rhythm, then I have to rely on the metronome, which is something I typically don't like to rely on. And we can do this a lot of different ways, but when I hit play on the playhead, some drum machines start over to the side of me. So when you hear the drum machine, you might hear me disappear for a second. Every once in a while I'm editing tracks, I'm sorry. But yeah, the drum machine has like a hi-hat going, and I can turn that off. And I just pick a different pattern that I've already kind of programmed. And within the pattern, we're going to figure out what the drum beat's going to be. So I'm going to program my kick pattern first, and this is going to be a 909 style kick pattern. So kind of check this out. Ready? So on the track, I can pick what steps I'm on. I can look at the kick drums, and I can unmute it. All right, so kick. Here we go. We're going to record our kick pattern now. And I also have a snare drum pattern. So I'm going to get my snare in as well. Like I said, I do this because I don't want to have to use the metronome. Okay, so kick, snare, my initial pattern, that's the first two things I do. And then once I get side of the kick and snare, that I'm ready to work on some other parts of the track, right? And typically I work on like a synth sound. That's going to be me sequencing a note, a MIDI note, right? So basically when I play that note, I'm going to play it out of the monopoly. So we got a track over here, monopoly. I'm going to get ready to hit record. Now you're going to hear my vocals disappear, and I'm going to come back in a second, okay? Now I've recorded that bass sound. That came out of the monopoly. And I have my kick and I have my snare, right? So kick, snare, and bass. Those are the three things that I like getting started first. Now that is what I consider my skeleton of the song, right? And now I start to build upon this. The chords I want, the changes I want. I think the first note I picked was D, and I can put my tuner in to look at the note that I just recorded on track. And I gotta redo it because it's flat. So we gotta tune it just like a guitar. Better. Oh, you can't even hear me. Sorry, I was talking, you couldn't hear me. The digitac is actually the next thing I want to put into the track. So now we're going to record the digitac over this next onto another track. So I take an open hi-hat on the digitac and I take the envelope generator and I shorten the sound. So the next sound is the hi-hat. We're going to take that now. Here's our recording. So that time I took a recording of the hi-hats. So I'm going to rename the tracks now. So I rename everything hats. I got my bass is this sound, so I'm going to say bass. Now I'm going to say snare. And the last track I do is kick. So really what everyone's noticing in my studio is I basically just sample drum machines, synthesizers, and I record everything as audio. So that's typically what's happening. This is 4 tracks. A couple of them were drums. And now the drum tracks I basically group, so I know that those are my drums. I name that track drums. So now everything is labeled as well, right? So you label things. So we got a bass track, right? We have a hi-hat track. I'm going to zoom a little too, maybe make it a little easier to see. But the point's more how, the process of how I'm recording, right? And that's what I wanted everybody to get familiar with, okay? So these are all audio tracks so far. And now when I want to play around with chords, and this comes to a lot of the theory that we've learned in our streams before, and this is us doing track work with Ableton Live, we basically start to pick chords to put over top of a bass sound, and this was just some easy structure. And I believe I picked the D note, so I can pick D major, I can pick D minor, I can pick a lot of different keys on top of this, you know. So if I switch this to D up on top of Ableton, we're going to pick what key signature we're in. And then, of course, I'm going to pick minor right now. And now, for the first time, we're going to pick a MIDI track, right? So here we go. Okay, so the quickness in me is I have all my sounds. I have my favorite 30 sounds. I had a piano in my favorites, cellos, guitar, strings, bass, electric pianos, full strings, right? These are my stock sounds that I always have in favorites, and I would highly recommend this to everybody to have, because now you didn't just watch me go through thousands of presets and take 2 hours to show you this, right? So now you can hear my piano playing, right? I know that this is D. All right, I got the chords I'm going to use now. I just kind of picked the quickest 3 I could, right? So this would be like 6, 4, 3. So it's a 6, 4, 3 progression I'm going to do now, and I'm going to hit record on my MIDI track now with the grand piano. And this may be a placeholder, but I'm going to use it so that I have the chords, right? And I'm going to also add a little bit of compression to the piano so we hear it better. That way I don't have to play it so hard, and I can have more dynamics if I have it a little bit louder. That way my softer notes are heard, and I can actually play with more dynamics, so that's one of my tricks. And then I'm going to put a little bit of reverb on it because I want it to sound like it's in a natural space. Okay, so that's going to be my chord progression, and I'm going to hit record now, and here we go. Up my notes a little bit, maybe getting closer to the edges and things like that. And now this bass line might not be relevant anymore because now I have an actual progression, right? So before I didn't, I used those as placeholders, and now I'm going to go back and record my bass line with the chords that I did on the piano MIDI. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen over here on the mono poly. Again, you might hear me go dark for a moment. That I started working on this, like I said, this is just kind of the way that I build up a track. And I always try to show people that, like, nothing's going to be perfect right away, right? I don't have any of the changes. I don't have any of the drum fills. I don't have anything happening, right? So now it's up to me to start figuring out, like, how am I going to make the rhythm more interesting, I would say is the word. And typically I use a trick with beat repeat, all right? And my trick with beat repeat sometimes is, like, super simple, but it's highly effective, right? And that would mean at every 4 bars, I would turn on beat repeat to do some sort of drum fill, right? But I'd have to build the repeat now. So let's see how I would effectively do that. So I basically just pick up a beat repeat, put on the drum track. I set my grid to 1 bar, and I set gate to 1 bar, and I turn it to an instrument. Those are the 3 tricks, right? And once I do that, it's a catcher. So now let's listen to what happens to the drums as I do my trick. So again, you set grid to 1 bar, you set gate to 1 bar, and you turn it to from mix to instrument when you click inside of beat repeat, okay? Once you have that done, you can catch any drum part, and then, you know, I'm like the most simple human on earth because I would prefer to automate that inside of like a clip somewhere, right? So do some sort of automation, right? And the idea that, like, we could do that. We could make some kind of like follow action. We could do anything we wanted. I could just do that effect on like a kick or a snare or somewhere very simple. Just depends on where I want to have that, right? So the beat repeat itself, let's say I want to have affect the snare drum, right? And listen to what happens now. I'm trying to find the snare. Let's see if we can find it. Weird. You can use it as a catcher, right? That's kind of weird. So who knows what we're going to do, right? But the idea that when I'm programming my drums out, I can think of fun, cool variations, right? And the trick that I do, since this is audio, is now I actually sample my drums into another audio track. So I'm going to say, I'm going to take the drum. Sorry, that was my voice. I'm going to take the drums, and now I'm going to record them. So now that they're on a track, that trick I'm about to do now, check this out. Super cool. So now we can catch the drums, right? Now, I'm gonna just make an envelope that catches this every how many bars? Maybe like 4 or something like that. And that idea that I make an automation, and that's gonna basically be in your envelopes. And now whatever you touch last inside of your device, which is gonna be grid, everybody's gonna see me do a small automation. So at the 4th bar, and we can detach this, we can make this as long as we want. So I'm gonna make this a little bit longer, you know, inside of the point itself. And that way we'll get some variations, right? So I can say, should be able to just duplicate the loop. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna duplicate our groove. If there's a way that lets me do it with audio. Watch this. Copy, tab, paste, duplicate, consolidate. Wow. Copy. Well, I cut it, and now it's 4 bars long. So that variation now, I can do my fills at the end of 4 bars. That's what I want, right? So everybody's gonna see me do like automations in the envelope, and what you're gonna see is I'm gonna draw it on a bigger grid. I'm just gonna do quarter note grids, right? And that grid's gonna be on the grid of beat repeat. So we're gonna Sorry you couldn't hear me there a minute because I had Ableton crash. So during that crash, I lost my mic, but basically you guys are watching me draw and beat repeat. You know, a lot of people aren't sharing this secret. So basically the secret again is your grid and your gate at 1 bar and your thing set to instrument. And that way as you're playing back, So a little more like in time now, right? And then I made that piano line too. Let's see if we can hear it. More interesting because I got some of the glitching going on, some of the changes, and this came from something super simple. Now, this does come from move ideas because when I'm teaching Ableton, I always tell everybody to work on like 3 or 4 tracks and try to make it sound like as good as you can with 3 or 4 tracks. And then the idea that once you kind of can get that going, you can keep adding your next idea. So now if I'm going to play lead with, say, like a synth, right? Now, I can play lead with any synth that I want, you know, there's no limitation in this, right? Why would there be, right? So now, let's say, I don't know, I'm going to play lead, and I get my synth ready, and this is just for sake of proximity, so everybody can see it. So I plug in a synthesizer, and we've got OP Field, the one that everybody complains about price, but then sounds like the best synthesizer on earth. Makes me laugh. And all right, so now I got some dirty ass synth, and actually this was, I believe, a 6 yeah, maybe it is actually the 4-3 that I said it was, but let's see how the progression unfolds. Let's pick a better lead synth. Something kind of emotional. We'll hit a record on this and then I'll stop stream. Okay, so let's try our take. I'll be back in a second. I don't know if I like that sound, so we're going to change it. Now I'm going to do a take. kind of crazy, kind of weird, kind of choppy and glitchy. But hey, like I said, I wanted to show everybody me working on, just track work in general. Maybe how I use some of my synthesizers and just plug them in and hit record and try stuff. I mean, it's Sunday. You have a day to make music for a little bit. It's a little cold outside. Maybe try working on something you've never really done. You can do that with any device in Ableton. You can do that with any simple synth, your voice. You could do that with a guitar. Have a friend come over and record with you that plays instruments and bounce off each other. So, keep it in mind. We're working on some stuff. I want you to stay productive. I want you to keep focused. Try working on 3 or 4 tracks at a time. Play with some great effects. And more importantly, make some music. Okay? Well, hey, everybody enjoy the Sunday. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.